Laban, the most overlooked villain in the Bible. All glory to my Lord and Saviour, Jesus Christ. Thank you for paying a debt that I simply could not pay. I love you, Lord, and I thank you for your blessings. Hebrews 9:15, for this reason he is the mediator of a new covenant, so that since the death has taken place for the redemption of the transgressions that were committed under the first covenant, those who have been called may receive the promise of the eternal inheritance. Hallelujah. Challenge the content of this video, tear it apart. If what is in here isn't biblically sound, correct me. I have no desire to be a false teacher. What will we look at? Who is Laban? Laban the first idolater. Laban possibly a diviner. Laban the architect of the second division of man. His first appearance in more detail. Laban in the first division of man. Genesis 35:22, the most overlooked bloodline pollution attempt event in the Bible. Bilhah, Leah's handmaid. The strange account of Jacob increasing his flock in Genesis 30. And Revelation 2:17, the white stone. So, who is Laban? So we see Laban first in Genesis 24:28. Then the girl ran and told her mother's household about these things. Now Rebekah had a brother whose name was Laban, and Laban ran outside to the man at the spring. Now you will all remember this story where Abraham has sent out a servant to find a wife for Isaac. Rebekah becomes that wife, and obviously Laban is Rebekah's brother. So here's a little chart with a genealogy from Terah. We see Terah and Abraham are mentioned first in Genesis 11 there. We see Rebekah and Laban mentioned in Genesis 24 and Isaac. And we see Rebekah become Isaac's wife and the mother of Jacob and Esau, and obviously Jacob becomes the father of the 12 tribes in Genesis 29 and 30 onwards. So there must be something in Bethuel's bloodline here, because Rebekah was the architect of Jacob's attempted stealing of the birthright of Esau. And we see in Genesis 27:5, Rebekah was listening while Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game to bring home, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, behold, I heard your father speak to your brother Esau, saying, bring me some game and prepare a savoury dish for me, that I may eat and bless you in the presence of the Lord before my death. Now therefore, my son, listen to me as I command you. So Rebekah very much in charge of that event. So Laban, we see Strong's 3837, and then that comes from Laban, Strong's 3835, which is to make brick or be white or be made white. And we also see it linked to Strong's 3843, Labana, which you can see here comes from Laban, which is a brick or a tile. So Laban is a shadow of Simon the sorcerer in Acts 8:9-24. So please go and do your own study on that. So Laban is the first idolater recorded in the Bible, and out of lots of tags, that isn't one that you want. So Genesis 31:19, when Laban had gone to shear his flock, then Rachel stole the household items that were her father's. Now you'll see the word for idol here is teraphim, Strong's 8655. And you'll see there that that's the first mention of it in Genesis 31:19. So teraphim, household idols, household idol, linked to idolatry. So not good. So diviner, Genesis 30:27, But Laban said to him, if it now pleases you, stay with me. I have divined that the Lord has blessed me on your account. And we'll see that the word for diviner there is Nachash, Strong's 5172. And it's the same word that's used in Leviticus 19:26 for soothsaying. You shall not eat anything with the blood, nor practice divination or soothsaying. And the same word as one who interprets omens in Deuteronomy 18:10. Therefore shall not be found among you anyone who makes his son or his daughter pass through the fire, one who uses divination, one who practices witchcraft, or one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer. Now, the reason there's a question mark by this is you'll see there in Genesis 44:5, the word for Nahash. This is the account where Joseph has placed a cup and some things in with his brothers' things when they are leaving Egypt, and he's had his servants follow them then. And we read in Genesis 44:5, is this not the one from which my Lord, which is Joseph, drinks, and which he indeed uses for divination? So there's no way Joseph is a diviner or a sorcerer or anything. So we've got other uses of the word there, which is learned by experience or diligently observe. So we can't fully say that Laban was a diviner, but again, as usual, do your own research. Now we can see that diviner, Strong's 5172 is a root word for Nachash 5175, which is serpent. I don't know that any more explanation is needed there. So Laban, a second picture of the Antichrist, the architect of the second division of man. So Genesis 29, we have the second division of man, which is the account of Jacob becoming the father of the 12 tribes. While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came the father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. When Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, Jacob went up and rolled the stone from the mouth of the well and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted his voice and wept. Jacob told Rachel that he was a relative of her father and that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. So when Laban heard the news of Jacob, his sister's son, he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. Then he related to Laban all these things. Laban said to him, surely you are my bone and my flesh, and he stayed with him a month. Then Laban said to Jacob, because you are my relative, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be? Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. And Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful of form and face. Now Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel. Laban said, it is better that I give her to you than to give her to another man. Stay with me. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of his love for her. So in verse 15, we see Laban saying, because you are my relative, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me what your wages be. He's been through this about 100 odd years ago when dealing with Abraham's servant in the account we read at the start of this, when Abraham's servant was looking for a bride for Isaac and ended up with Laban's sister Rebekah. So while he is trying to look helpful, what he is realistically doing here is trying to flush out a nice big dowry for a bride for Jacob. So Jacob was obviously Isaac inherited from Abraham, so it's fairly inconceivable that he would have travelled without a servant, supplies and money. So he did realistically have that a stash with him, you would have thought. But what we have here in verse 15 is a picture of Lord Jesus, who was prepared to toil and serve for his bride, which is, of course, the church. If you want to do some studies into the names of Leah and Rachel, you will find out that Leah is a reference to the law, and Rachel is a reference to the gospel, because Rachel is obviously beautiful. And in Romans 10:15, how will they preach unless they are sent? Just as it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news of good things. So then Jacob says to Laban, give me your wife, for my time is completed, that I may go into her. Laban gathered all the men of the place and made a feast. Now in the evening he took his daughter Leah and brought her to him, and Jacob went into her. Laban also gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah as a maid. So it came about in the morning, behold, it was Leah. And Laban said to her, what is this you have done to me? Was it not Rachel that I served you? Why then have you deceived me? But Laban said, it is not the practice in our place to marry off the younger before the firstborn. So verse 26 is the most important for what we'll be looking at tonight, and obviously Laban has got a scheme here. Complete the week of this one, and we will give you the other also for the service which you shall serve me another 7 years. But Jacob did so and completed her week, and he gave him his daughter Rachel as his wife. Laban also gave his maid Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as a maid. So Jacob went in to Rachel also, and indeed he loved Rachel more than Leah, and he served the Laban for another 7 years. Now as the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, and he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. Leah conceived and bore a son, and named him Reuben, for she said, because the Lord has seen my affliction, surely now my husband will love me. So I think at this point we see that Leah, Rachel, Zilpah and Bilhah are available for Jacob to go into, and I think Laban here is trying to engineer that Bilhah bears the first child of Jacob, and this would be a pollution of the messianic line, I would say. And the reason I think this is the case is because we will soon see that Laban wasn't successful here with his plan, and he will try to do this for the next generation. So Laban's first appearance in more detail. Now Abram was very old, advanced in age, and the Lord had blessed Abram in every way. Abram had said to his servant, the oldest of his household, who had charge of all that he owned, please place your hand under my thigh, and I will make you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you shall not take for a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I live, but you will go to my country and to my relatives to take a wife for my son Isaac. The servant said to him, suppose a woman is not willing to follow me to this land, should I take your son back to the land from where you came? So the servant is probably Eliezer of Damascus, who is mentioned as far back as Genesis 15, where he was the chief steward. This is approximately 55 years after that. So if we think of Abram as the chairman of the board, Eliezer is the CEO, and is charged with the daily running of Abram's operations. So Eliezer here is a picture of the Holy Spirit, where he is sent forth with the authority of Abraham, who sent him, and not in his own authority. But please do your own study on that. Then Abram said to him, beware that you do not take my son back there. The Lord, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from my land of birth, and who spoke to me and swore to me, saying, to your descendants I will give this land. He will send his angel before you, and you will take a wife for my son from there. But if the woman is not willing to follow you, then you will be free from this oath, and do not take my son back there. So the servant placed his hand under the thigh of Abraham his master and swore to him concerning this matter. Now, Abraham doesn't want a wife from the daughter of the Canaanites, because this goes back to Genesis 9, and Ham, who was the father of the Canaanites, sees Noah's nakedness. If anyone's got any theories on what that actually means, then please let me know, because I don't. So then the servant took 10 camels from the camels of his master and set out with a variety of good things of his master's in his hand, and he arose and went to Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor. He made the camels kneel down outside the city by the well of water at evening time, the time when women go to draw water. He said, O Lord, the God of my master Abram, please grant me success today and show loving kindness to my master Abram. Behold, I am standing by the spring, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Now may it be that the girl to whom I say, please let down your jar, that I may drink, and who answers, drink, and I will water your camels also, may she be the one whom you have appointed for your servant Isaac, and by this I will know that you have shown loving kindness to my master. Before he had finished speaking, behold, Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Abram's brother Nahor, came out with a jar on her shoulder. The girl is very beautiful, a virgin, and no man had relations with her. And she went down to the spring, filled her jar, and came up. Then the servant ran to meet her and said, please let me drink a little water from your jar. She said, drink, my lord. And she lowered her jar to her hand and gave him a drink. Now when she had finished giving him a drink, she said, I will draw also for your camels until they have finished drinking. So she quickly emptied her jar through the trough and ran back to the well to draw. And she drew for all his camels. Meanwhile the man was gazing at her in silence to know whether the Lord had made his journey successful or not. When the camels had finished drinking, the man took a gold ring weighing half a shekel and 2 bracelets for her wrists weighing 10 shekels in gold, and said, whose daughter are you? Please tell me there is room for us to lodge in your father's house. She said to him, I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor. Again she said to him, we have plenty of both straw and feed and room to lodge in. Then the man bowed low and worshipped the Lord. He said, blessed be the Lord, the God of my master Abram, who has not forsaken his loving kindness and his truth towards my master. As for me, the Lord has guided me in the way of this house of my master's brothers. Then the girl ran and told her mother's household about these things. Now Rebekah had a brother whose name was Laban, and Laban ran out to the man at the spring. When he saw the ring and the bracelet on his sister's wrists, and when he heard the words of Rebekah's sister saying, this is what the man said to me, he went to the man, and behold, he was standing by the camels at the spring. So we can see in verse 30, Laban, when he saw the ring and the bracelets on his wrists. So I think if we were there, Laban might have even vocalized the words ka-ching, but we know straight away where his motivation here is, and it's material lucre and nothing spiritual. Probably a link here with Judas, but I don't think this exclusively makes Laban a link with Judas, but there is obviously an overlap there. And he said, come in, be blessed of the Lord. Why do you stand outside, since I've prepared the house and a place for the camels? So the man entered the house. Then Laban unloaded the camels, and he gave straw and feed to the camels, and water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. But when food was set before him to eat, he said, I will not eat until I have told my business. And he said, speak on. So he said, I am Abram's servant. So we know from Genesis 31:19 that Laban is an idolater. So in preparing the house here in verse 31, maybe he has removed the idols from view. And in verse 32 here, Laban has unloaded the camels and given straw to feed the camels first. before he's tended to the servants and water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. Obviously, the goodies, the lucre, the material things are in the camel's sacks, and that's where Laban's focus was. So the Lord has greatly blessed my master, so that he's become rich, and he has given him flocks and herds and silver and gold, and servants and maid and camels and donkeys. Now Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son to my master in her old age, and he has given him all that he has. My master has made me swear, saying that you shall not take for my wife a son from the daughter of the Canaanites in whose land I live, but you shall go to my father's house and to my relatives and take a wife for my son. I said to my master, suppose the woman does not follow me. And like the verse 36 here, my master bore a son, my master's wife bore a son to my master, and he has given him all that he has, and God has given us all that he has, and that is in his Son, the Lord Jesus Christ. And obviously we've got another reference here to the daughters of the Canaanites, and that's again going back to Ham seeing Noah's nakedness in Genesis 9. So he said to me, the Lord before whom I have walked will send his angel with you to make your journey successful, and you will take a wife for my son, from my relatives, and from my father's house. Then you will be free from my oath when you come to my relatives, and if they do not give her to you, you will be free from my oath. So I came today to the spring and said, O Lord, the God of my master Abram, if now you will make my journey on which I go successful, behold, I am standing by the spring, and may be that the maiden who comes out to draw, and to whom I say, please let me drink a little water from your jar, and she will say to me, you drink, and I will draw for your camels also. Let her be the woman whom the Lord has appointed for my master's son. Before I had finished speaking in my heart, behold, Rebekah came out with her jar on her shoulder and went down to the spring and drew. And I said to her, please let me drink. She quickly lowered her jar from her shoulder and said, drink, and I will water your camels also. So I drank, and she watered the camels also. Then I asked her, and she said, whose daughter are you? And she said, the daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah bore to him. And I put the ring on her nose and bracelets on her wrists. And I bowed low and worshipped the Lord and blessed the Lord, the God of my master Abram, who has guided me in the right way to take the daughter of my master's kinsman for his son. So now if you're going to deal kindly and truly with my master, tell me, and if not, let me know, that I may turn to the right hand or to the left. Then Laban and Bethuel replied, the matter comes from the Lord, so we cannot speak to you bad or good. Here is Rebekah before you. Take her and go. Let her be the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has spoken. And verse 50 here is key. And if I just read from Gill's exposition of the entire Bible, verse 30, then Laban and Bethuel answered. The order of the words in the original is, then answered Laban and Bethuel. The word for answered is in the singular number, from whence it may be concluded that Laban gave the answer in the name of Bethuel. Again, Laban's sole focus here is a material gain. So Laban and the first vision of man, and Laban wasn't there physically, but what we see here is interesting. So if we go back to the first vision of man in Genesis 11, now the whole world, it was the same language and the same words. It came about as they journeyed east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. They said to one another, come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly. And they used brick for stone, and they used tar for mortar. They said, come, let us build for ourselves a city and a tower whose top will reach into heaven, and let us make for ourselves a name, otherwise we will be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. The Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. The Lord said, Behold, they are one people, and they all have the same language. And this is what they began to do, and now nothing which they purpose to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down there and confuse their language, so that they will not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad, and from there over the face of the whole earth, and they stopped building the city. Therefore its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of the whole earth. Now if we revisit Genesis 11:3, they said to one another, Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly. And they used brick for stone, and they used tar for mortar. We just see the words there, Strong's 3835 there, and 3843 there, two words that we've already looked at. And we've got stone, eben there, Strong's 68 there. I'm sure there'll be a link there somewhere, but I haven't chased it down as of yet. So there we see Laban 3837, and we see that Laban 3835 is there for let us make bricks, and then we see Laban there 3843 is in the same passage. So although he's not there in body, he's definitely there in spirit, I would say. And the fact that he is present at both the first two separations of human beings, well, there's only been two, I would say, is really interesting. So Genesis 35:22, the culmination of Laban's plans. I think this personally goes back to the seed prophecy of Genesis 3:15, and I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise you on the head, and you shall bruise him on the heel. Now this is an incredibly important verse in the Bible. Not only is it the first prophecy, but we have the first gospel here, and we have the first specific mention of the Saviour. So a very interesting verse there. So following the seed prophecy of Genesis 3:15, the adversary has always sought to pollute the messianic bloodline, but there is one we seem to have overlooked. Now, I've just taken this from the work of Dr. Chuck Missler. So he's noted there a couple of Satan's attacks to wipe out the seed of the woman. Again, look into those yourself. We've got some attacks on David's line as well. Again, chase those down, look into those yourself. So Genesis 35:9 onwards, we have a completion. Then God appeared to Jacob again when he came from Padan Aram, and he blessed him. God said to him, Your name is Jacob. You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel shall be your name. Then he called him Israel. God also said to him, I am God Almighty, be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall come from you, and kings shall come forth from you. The land which I gave to Abraham and Isaac I will give to you, and I will give the land to your descendants after you. Then God went up from him in the place where he had spoken with him. Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he had spoken with him, a pillar of stone, and he poured out a drink offering on it. He also poured oil on it. So Jacob named the place where God had spoken with him Bethel. Then they journeyed from Bethel, where he was still some distance, to go to Ephrath. Rachel began to bring birth, and she suffered severe labour. When she was in severe labour, the midwife said to her, Do not fear, for now you have another son. It came about as the soul was departing, for she died, that she named him Ben-Oni. But his father called him Benjamin. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. Jacob set up a pillar over a grave, and that pillar is of Rachel's grave to this day. Then Israel journeyed on and pitched his tent beyond the tower of Edeh. it came about when Israel was dwelling in the land that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard of it. So by verse 21 here, we have got the application of the word Israel to Jacob, and with the birth of Benjamin, we have the nation Israel, the people Israel, is now complete. Now, after every completion, there is an opportunity for a new beginning. And what we see here in Genesis 35:22 is Bilhah looking to maybe get a son from Reuben, who is obviously Jacob's firstborn. Now, if this union was blessed, and I mean blessed in the loosest sense of the word, if a child came from this, then that child, I would say, would be a powerful king for the adversary. Now, if we look at a few things here, verse 19 first, that is obviously Rachel's death is linked to Genesis 30. Now when Rachel saw that she had borne Jacob no children, she became jealous of her sister, and she said to Jacob, "Give me children or else I die." Then Jacob's anger burned against Rachel, and he said, "Am I in the place of God, who has withheld from me the fruit of your womb?" She said, "Here is my maid Bilhah, go into her, that she may bear on my knees, that through her I too may have children." So there's Rachel and Bilhah, and then there's Rachel and Bilhah comes on the scene. So here Rachel says she's going to die unless she gets children, and she's given Bilhah, and obviously here Rachel dies and Bilhah's on the scene trying to get children from the first born. So something interesting going on there. And if we go back to Genesis 35:21 as well, we've got the Tower of Eder, Migdal Eder, Strong's 4029. We've got Migdal, which is tower, and we see that mentioned in Genesis 11:4 and 5 first, which I would say is a tip of the hat to the Bardi, the Bard side, the Bard bloodline. And then we've got Eder is the flock, which we see the word first used with Jacob's meeting of Rachel back in Genesis 29:2. So interesting. So if we go back to Genesis 29, then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife, for my time is completed, that I may go into her." Laban gathered all the men of the place and made a feast. Now in the evening he took his daughter Leah and brought her to him, etc., etc. And we get to verse 26, and again, it is not the practice in our place to marry off the younger before the firstborn. So Laban is doing some engineering there, but the firstborn will be important in Laban's eyes because he's put Leah there, but also Bilhah, we saw later on, becomes part of the mix, and I think Laban was realistically working for the adversary, or for even just for lucre, and he wanted Bilhah to have the firstborn there, which she didn't have, but they try again then 15 odd years later with Reuben there in Genesis 35:22, or it's a complete coincidence that Reuben was the one that Bilhah chose to seduce or engage with, and it's a coincidence that Laban engineered it so that Leah was given to Jacob as his wife. So we see here that Laban will ultimately be foiled, and in Genesis 49, which is obviously Jacob's deathbed blessings of the tribes, the patriarchs, "Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength. preeminent in dignity and preeminent in power. Uncontrollable as water, you shall not have preeminence, because you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it. He went up to my couch. So he went up to my couch is obviously scathing, because by this point in the blessing, if you can call it that, he actually just refers to him, not even by name. But we'll see there in the first verses, verse 3, Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might and the beginning of my strength, preeminent in dignity, preeminent in power. So we can see here why Laban may be wanting to get Bilhah to procreate with Reuben, and they obviously could have a strong child. So Laban was in it for the long haul. Laban came on the scene in Genesis 24, approximately 2030 BC. And by the time he was involved with Jacob in Genesis 29, it is approximately 1920 BC. Now it's 110 years, and obviously going back to Genesis 24, he has answered for his dad in saying that the matter came from the Lord and engineered or rubber stamped Rebecca's betrothing to Isaac. So Laban had been scheming for 110 years by the time we get to Genesis 29, and in Genesis 35 then where Bilhah slept with Reuben, it's about 15 years later. And then it was about 47 years later in Genesis 49 where Jacob pronounces Judah as the Messianic line, and Laban's plan comes to naught. But Laban has chosen to serve, looking to serve the adversary for a long time there. So, interesting. So Bilhah, Leah's concubine and the mother of Dan. Now, what we go back to Genesis 29, complete the week of this one, and we will give you the other also for the service, which you shall serve me for another 7 years. Jacob did so and completed her week, and he gave him his daughter Rachel as his wife. Laban also gave his maid Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as her maid. So Jacob went into Rachel also, and indeed he loved Rachel more than Leah, and he served Laban for another 7 years. Now, surely what we've got here is some sort of early reference to Jacob's trouble, because the root word of Bilhah is Balha, which means to be troubled, and we've got Jacob here, and we've got 7 years mentioned twice. Now, Jeremiah 37, the KJV, alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. And obviously that's a reference to the Jews, the saved Jews in the tribulation period. So there's Bilhah, comes from the root or Strong's 1089, and you will see that is Balha, and that is frightened or to trouble. So maybe something there, maybe not. But we've got Bilhah mentioned as Belial here, and there's a link between the words. Again, you'll have to dig through the lexicons yourselves and do a little study. So 2 Corinthians 6:14 onwards. Do not be bound together with unbelievers, for what partnership of righteousness and lawlessness? Or what fellowship has light with darkness? Or what harmony has Christ with Belial? And again, search up that word, do some digging in the lexicons, and you will see that there's a link there between Bilhah and Belial. Now, this is just something that I thought might have been interesting. Bilhah and Judas both mentioned 11 times in the Bible. Now, the reason this is even more interesting than the two of them is because Judas obviously was one of the apostles, and 12 minus 1 gives us 11, and Bilhah is obviously the mother of Dan, who I believe is a special tribe for the wrong reasons. And if you take down out of the 12, you've got your 11 there. Might be something, might be nothing, but again, dig into it for yourselves. We've got Laban here as well, Strong's 3842, linked with the moon, full moon. So either you will know what I'm trying to say here, or you won't, but that's really interesting. So the strange account of Jacob increasing his flock in Genesis 30. Now it came about when Rachel had borne Joseph that Jacob said to Laban, "Send me away that I may go to my own place and to my own country. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you, and let me depart. For you yourself know my service which I have rendered you." But Laban said to him, "No, if it pleases you, stay with me. I have divined that the Lord has blessed me on your account." He continued, "Name me your wages, and I will give it." But he said to him, "You yourself know that I have served you, and how your cattle have fed with me. For you had little before I came, and it increased to a multitude, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I turned. But now, when shall I provide for my own household also?" So he said, "What shall I give you?" And Jacob says, "You shall not give me anything. If you do this one thing for me, I will again pasture and keep your flock. Let me pass through your entire flock today, removing from there every speckled and spotted sheep, and every black one among the lambs, and the spotted speckled among the goats, and shall be my wages." So again, what we see here is another separation. We're going to have Jacob's flock and Laban's flock very soon. "So my honesty will answer for me later when you come concerning my wages. Everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats, and black among the lambs, if found with me, will be considered stolen." Laban said, "Good, let it be according to your word." So he moved on that day, and the striped and spotted male goats, and all the speckled and the spotted female goats, every one with white in it, and all the black ones among the sheep, and gave them into the care of his sons. And he put a distance of 3 days between himself and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. Then Jacob took fresh rods of poplar and almond and plane trees, and peeled white stripes in them, exposing the white which was in the rods. He set the rods which he had peeled in front of the flocks in the gutters, even in the watering troughs, where the flocks came to drink, and they mated when they came to drink. So the flocks mated by the rods, and the flocks brought forth, striped, speckled, and spotted. Jacob separated the lambs, and made the flocks face toward the striped, and all the black in the flock of Laban. And he put his own herds apart, and did not put them with Laban's flock. Moreover, whenever the stronger of the flock were mating, Jacob would place the rods in the sight of the flock in the gutters, so that they might mate by the rods. But when the flock was feeble, he did not put them in. So the feebler were Laban's, and the stronger were Jacob's. So the man became exceedingly prosperous, and had large flocks, and female and male servants, and camels, and donkeys. So if we go to Genesis 30:37 there, then Jacob took fresh rods of poplar and almond and plane, and peeled white stripes in them, exposing the white which was in the rods. Not only will we see the word 3836 Laban there, which we've seen before, we'll also see the adjective poplar is Strong's 3839, which is again linked to Laban and white. So there we have it. Very interesting. So Laban's in the thick of that. And there we have 3836, which we've looked at. So Laban's got a flock here, and realistically, and again, you need to do your own study on this, Jacob's flock is a picture of the church and a picture of saved Jews, or circumcised Jews. So this makes Laban's flock a picture of the world and unsaved Jews. Again, this does not paint Laban in a good light. And we've got Zechariah 11, where there's a mention of things like the idol shepherd, so not good. And if we go back to the birth of Dan here, when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she became jealous of her sister, and she said to Jacob, "Give me children or else I die." Then Jacob's anger burned against Rachel, and he said, "Am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" She said, "Here's my maid Bilhah, go into her that she may bear on my knees, that through her I too may have children." So she gave him her maid Bilhah as a wife, and Jacob went into her. Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, "God has vindicated me, and has indeed heard my voice, and has given me a son." Therefore she named him Dan. So if we go back to that passage where the rods are affecting the births of the children, the offspring, the lambs, then we can see here that, I don't know, is there a possibility that Dan here, again, who I believe through which the man of sin will come, has been affected or shaped by the fact that Rachel was jealous and Jacob was angry, and this has resulted in Bilhah being given as a maid. Speculative but interesting. So Revelation 2:17. Again, if we look at Laban, we've got make brick, make white, be white, brick tile. And in Revelation 2:17, he who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says the churches. To him who overcomes, to him I will give some of the hidden manna, and I will give him a white stone and a new name written on the stone, which no one knows but he who receives it. I've got no more than that, but definitely interesting, I would say. Thank you for listening, and God bless.